The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of light and darkness. But on this night, something tore through that web, something that answered to neither the light nor the dark, something that had crawled from a different kind of hell entirely. The dimensional rift opened 3 kilometers above Coruscant Senate District at 0247 hours. Imperial Standard Time. It wasn't a hyperspace signature. It wasn't a ship malfunction. Security scanners registered only a momentary spike of energy that defied classification before a figure plummeted through the capital planet's atmosphere, trailing green fire that burned without consuming. Al Simmons' spawn hit the durasteel roof of an abandoned industrial complex with enough force to crater the reinforced metal. The symbiotic suit absorbed most of the impact, but the landing still drove the air from his lungs. He rolled to his feet, chains rattling, cape billowing like living smoke around his armored form. The glowing green eyes of his mask swept the unfamiliar skyline. Towers. Endless towers stretching into a polluted sky, choked with air traffic. Neon signs and languages he'd never seen. The smell of ozone, exhaust, and something else, something that made Letha, his symbiote, recoil instinctively. Where the hell are we? Spawn's voice was a rasp, the suit modulating his words into something between human and demonic. The last thing he remembered was pursuing a demon through the alleys of New York, following its sulfurous trail into an abandoned subway tunnel. Then light, blinding, wrong, pulling at him like a tidal wave. The demon's scream had been cut short as reality itself seemed to tear apart. Now he stood on an alien world, and every instinct screamed danger. A patrol of white-armored soldiers rounded the corner of an adjacent building, their movements precise and mechanical. Stormtroopers, though Spawn had no name for them yet. They spotted him immediately, a 7-foot figure wreathed in tattered cape and glowing with eldritch energy was hard to miss. Halt. Identify yourself. The lead trooper's voice crackled through his helmet speaker. Blaster rifle snapping up. Spawn's chains erupted from his body like striking serpents, disarming 3 troopers before they could fire. The weapons clattered to the rooftop. The remaining stormtroopers opened fire. Bolts of red energy that Spawn's enhanced reflexes barely registered. He twisted, the cape deflecting 2 shots. His armored gauntlet catching a third that left a scorch mark, but no real damage. Wrong move, Spawn growled. He closed the distance in a heartbeat, moving with speed that shouldn't be possible for something so heavily armored. One trooper went down with a shattered helmet. Another flew backward from a kick that dented his chest plate. The last one triggered his comlink, screaming coordinates before. Spawn's chain wrapped around his throat, not tight enough to kill, but enough to silence him. Spawn released the trooper, letting him collapse gasping. He wasn't here to kill soldiers who didn't know what they were fighting. But as he turned to leave, something made him pause. A feeling, not quite pain, not quite pressure, but a sensation like invisible fingers pressing against his mind. The Force, though Spawn had no name for it yet, was trying to touch something that hell had already claimed. High above, in a meditation chamber within the Imperial Palace, a different pair of eyes snapped open, yellow and burning with Sith fire. Emperor Palpatine tilted his head, sensing the disturbance, a void where life should be. A darkness that wasn't born of the dark side, something other. Curious, the Emperor whispered to the empty room. On the rooftop, Spawn's head jerked upward as if hearing a distant voice. Letha rippled across his body, the living suit sensing predators in this strange new hunting ground. Spawn had survived hell itself, had fought demons and angels, had died and been reborn in damnation. But something about this place, this city of endless lights and suffocating order, felt wrong in ways even hell had never managed. The distant wail of more sirens echoed through the urban canyons. Spawn's cape spread like bat wings, catching air that shouldn't support it, carrying him into the shadows between buildings. He needed answers. He needed to know where he was, how he'd gotten here, and most importantly, how to get back. But in the darkness of Coruscant's lower levels, hunted by an empire he didn't understand, Spawn would soon learn that some prisons weren't made of bars and chains. Some were made of an entire galaxy, ruled by darkness that would either destroy him or try to claim him as its own. And in a fortress of black durasteel, a tall figure in a breathing apparatus turned his masked face toward the Senate district. Darth Vader felt it too. The disturbance, the anomaly. The thing that radiated power but held no signature in the Force. "Send the Inquisitors," Vader commanded, his mechanical voice cutting through the bridge of his Star Destroyer. "I want this creature found. Alive, if possible." The hunt had begun. If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Spawn vanished into Coruscant's underworld, unaware that he'd just become the most wanted being in the galaxy, not for what he'd done, but for what he represented. A power outside the Emperor's control. A warrior who answered to no master, living or dead. The city's billion lights glittered like stars, beautiful and cold, as somewhere in the darkness, Hell's soldier began planning his next move. He'd escaped damnation once before. This time, he'd have to escape an empire. The Inquisitorius. Headquarters occupied a black tower in Coruscant's government district, a structure that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Inside, 5 figures stood in a circular chamber, their crimson lightsabers casting bloody shadows on the walls. They were the Empire's hunters, Force sensitives who had survived Order 66 by betraying everything the Jedi once stood for. The fifth brother, a hulking Dalyudan with gray skin and a ridge of bone across his skull, studied the holographic reports with growing interest. The troopers described green fire and chains that moved like living things. No lightsaber, no Force signature. Impossible, the seventh sister countered, her Mirialan features sharp with skepticism. Everything with that much power leaves an impression in the Force. He's masking himself somehow, or he's something the Jedi never encountered. The Grand Inquisitor said quietly. The Powan's yellow eyes gleamed with dark curiosity. Lord Vader believes this creature warrants our attention. We will not disappoint him. In the industrial sector's lower levels, Spawn crouched on a ventilation shaft, watching the city's inhabitants move through the streets below. 3 hours in this place, and he'd learned enough to know he was in serious trouble. This wasn't Earth. This wasn't even his dimension. The technology alone, flying cars, energy weapons, robots that acted like people, told him he'd crossed into something far beyond a simple demonic gateway. Letha pulsed against his skin, the symbiote suit still adapting to the strange energy that permeated everything here. Spawn could feel it too, like static electricity that never quite discharged, pressing against his consciousness. It wasn't hostile exactly, but it was everywhere, and it made his necroplasm reserves burn slower, regenerate harder. A group of desperate-looking humans huddled in an alley below, their clothes ragged, their faces hollow with hunger. An armored patrol passed them without acknowledgement, the white-clad soldiers treating the suffering civilians like furniture. Spawn's fists clenched. He knew tyranny when he saw it. The uniforms were different, but the boot on the neck was always the same. One of the civilians, a young woman with a cybernetic arm, glanced upward. Her eyes widened as she spotted Spawn's silhouette. Before she could scream, he raised a finger to where his lips would be beneath the mask. She froze, then slowly nodded, understanding passing. Between them, 2 people who knew what it meant to hide from predators. That's when Spawn felt it. A prickling sensation across his shoulders, like being watched by something that saw more than eyes should see. He spun, chains materializing in his hands, and found himself facing 3 figures who'd somehow appeared on the rooftop behind him. Without making a sound, the Grand Inquisitor ignited his lightsaber, the crimson blade humming as it spun in a deadly circle. "Surrender, creature. The Empire wishes to speak with you." "Not interested in job offers," Spawn growled, his voice resonating with hellish harmonics. The fifth brother attacked first, his massive frame moving with unexpected speed. His lightsaber carved a burning arc toward Spawn's neck. Spawn's chains intercepted the blade, the necroplasm forged links somehow holding against the plasma edge. Sparks flew, green meeting red, as Spawn yanked hard, trying to tear the weapon from the Inquisitor's grip. The seventh sister flanked right, her blade thrusting toward Spawn's exposed side. He twisted, his cape sweeping out like a living shield. The lightsaber cut through the fabric, then stopped, tangled in material that refused to separate. That grabbed the blade like quicksand. The sister pulled back, momentarily off balance. "What manner of sorcery is this?" the Grand Inquisitor demanded. his spinning blade technique creating a defensive barrier as he circled. "You wouldn't understand," Spawn said, and unleashed a burst of necroplasmic energy from his gauntlet. The green fire erupted like hellish lightning, forcing all three Inquisitors to leap backward. The blast scorched the rooftop, melting durasteel into slag. But Spawn could feel the cost that single attack had drained. More of his reserves than it should have. In his own dimension, he could throw a dozen such blasts without concern. Here, every use of power came with a price. The Grand Inquisitor extended his hand, and Spawn felt an invisible force grab him, trying to lift him off the ground. The force push was powerful, fueled by dark side anger. But it was also something Spawn had never experienced before. His body rose a foot before Letha dug spectral claws into reality itself, anchoring him. The symbiote had survived Hell's physics-defying torments. It wasn't about to surrender to this galaxy's mystical energy. "Interesting," the Grand Inquisitor hissed. "You resist the Force itself. What are you?" "Your worst nightmare," Spawn replied, and this time he didn't hold back. His chains exploded outward in a dozen directions, each link glowing with hellfire. The Inquisitors scattered, lightsabers whirling to deflect the attack. The fifth brother wasn't fast enough. A chain wrapped around his ankle and slammed him into a ventilation unit hard enough to dent the metal. He groaned, struggling to rise. The seventh sister tried a different approach, reaching out with the Force to probe Spawn's mind. She expected to find thoughts, memories, the usual landscape of consciousness. Instead, she touched something vast and burning, a psyche that had endured damnation and crawled back out. She gasped, her connection severing as feedback pain lanced through her temples. He's been to hell," she whispered, her voice shaking. "Actually been there. Then he'll feel at home in the Emperor's service," the Grand Inquisitor said coldly, pressing his attack. The battle raged across 3 rooftops, a clash of technologies and powers that neither side fully understood. Lightsabers carved through permacrete and durasteel. Necroplasmic chains shattered guardrails and crushed sensor arrays. The Inquisitors fought with the discipline of trained warriors and the supernatural abilities of Force users. Spawn fought with 5 centuries of combat experience and the brutal efficiency of someone who died too many times to fear it. But he was tiring. The dimensional displacement, the interference with his powers, the constant drain on his necroplasm, it was adding up. A lightsaber slash got through his defenses, scoring across his shoulder armor. The symbiote absorbed most of the damage, but Spawn felt the heat, felt the pain. These energy blades could hurt him, maybe even kill him if they struck true. "You cannot win," the Grand Inquisitor said, sensing Spawn's weakening. "Surrender, and you may yet serve a purpose." Spawn's answer was to teleport. One moment he stood before them, chains raised defensively. The next, he was gone, dissolved into shadows that shouldn't exist in the neon-lit cityscape. The Inquisitors spun, searching with the Force, but found nothing. No trace, no signature, no indication of which direction their quarry had fled. "Impossible," the fifth brother snarled, cradling bruised ribs. "Nothing can hide from the Force that completely." "Report to Lord Vader," the Grand Inquisitor commanded, his expression dark with frustrated ambition. "This creature is beyond our abilities alone. We will require heavier intervention." 5 kilometers away, in a condemned building scheduled for demolition, Spawn materialized from the shadows and collapsed against a wall. His chest heaved, necroplasm levels dangerously low. Letha rippled across his body, the suit's own reserves depleted from maintaining their dimensional anchored during the fight. Those warriors with the laser swords, they were dangerous in ways Spawn hadn't anticipated. Fast, skilled, and wielding power that worked on completely different principles than anything he'd faced before. Worse, they clearly served some larger authority, which meant more would come. Stronger ones. Spawn's glowing eyes dimmed slightly as he fought to conserve power. He needed information. He needed allies, or at least people who could tell him what the hell this place was and how dimensional travel worked here. And most urgently, he needed to stay ahead of the hunters he could feel mobilizing across the city. In the Imperial Palace throne room, Emperor Palpatine smiled as reports reached him. The Inquisitors had failed, as expected, which meant it was time to unleash his true weapon, the one warrior whose power and ruthlessness surpassed all others. Lord Vader. Palpatine's hologram appeared before the Sith Lord aboard his Star Destroyer. I have a task worthy of your attention. Hunt down this anomaly. Bring it to me alive, or destroy it if it proves too dangerous to contain. I trust you will not disappoint me. Darth Vader bowed. As you wish, my master. The Dark Lord turned to his bridge crew. Mechanical breathing filling the command deck with its ominous rhythm. Prepare my shuttle. I will handle this personally. Somewhere in Coruscant's darkness, Spawn felt another presence turn its attention toward him. This one was different from the others. Older, colder, and filled with a darkness that even hell might respect. The hunt had just escalated, and Spawn realized with grim certainty that he was about to face something far more dangerous than the warriors who'd already found him. The galaxy's most feared enforcer was coming, and Hell's greatest warrior had nowhere left to run. Darth Vader's shuttle descended through Coruscant's atmosphere like a black knife, its angular silhouette cutting through the endless streams of traffic. On the landing platform of the Imperial Intelligence Headquarters, officers and analysts stood at rigid attention, none daring to breathe too loudly as the Dark Lord's boots struck durasteel with mechanical precision. Report, Vader commanded, his voice a respirator modulated bass that made even seasoned intelligence operatives flinch. Colonel Yularen, a veteran of the Clone Wars who'd served alongside Anakin Skywalker a lifetime ago, stepped forward with a datapad. My lord, the entity has evaded capture for 18 hours. It displays enhanced strength, energy projection, and teleportation capabilities. Most unusual, it leaves no force signature whatsoever. Vader's mask turned slowly toward the colonel. Nothing exists outside the Force. Yes, my lord. Yet our Force-sensitive assets report the same anomaly. They sense a void where the creature stands, as if it occupies space without truly existing in our reality. Vader was silent for a long moment, his breathing the only sound on the platform. He had felt the disturbance, had reached out through the Force to touch this intruder's presence, and found nothing. Not the emptiness of a Force null like the Yuuzhan Vong of ancient legends, but something else entirely. A darkness that wasn't born of the dark side, a power that answered to different laws. It reminded him, uncomfortably, of the visions he'd sometimes glimpsed. In the depths of his meditation, fragmentary images of realms beyond the galaxy, dimensions where the Force held no sway. The Sith holocron spoke of such places in whispers, calling them the outer reaches, where reality itself bent to alien rules. Show me where it was last seen, Vader said. In the condemned building 5 sectors away. Spawn had spent the last hour doing what he did best, surviving. He'd found a cache of discarded technology in the building's basement, including what looked like a portable computer terminal. The language was incomprehensible, but Letha was adapting. The symbiote's otherworldly intelligence, beginning to parse the alien symbols through pattern recognition. What Spawn learned made his situation immeasurably worse. This wasn't just another planet. This was a galaxy-spanning empire that controlled thousands of worlds. The white-armored soldiers were called stormtroopers. The energy swords were lightsabers. And the power those warriors wielded was something called the Force, a mystical energy field that apparently connected all living things. And the man in charge of hunting down threats to this empire was someone named Darth Vader, who the few underground news sources Spawn could access described in terms usually reserved for demons. The Emperor's Fist, the Jedi Killer, a dark warrior encased in life support armor who'd personally overseen the extermination of an entire order of peacekeepers. Sounds like my kind of guy, Spawn muttered darkly, though there was no humor in it. The building's entrance exploded inward, not with conventional explosives, but with the Force. Invisible power tearing duraplast and durasteel apart like tissue paper. Through the smoke and debris walked a figure that made the Inquisitors look like children, playing dress-up. 7 feet of black armor and flowing cape. A helmet with twin-eye lenses that burned with red light. And a mechanical breathing that sounded like death's own respirator. Darth Vader had arrived. You will come with me, Vader stated, his hand rising as the Force reached out to crush Spawn's windpipe. The invisible grip tightened, then stopped. Vader's head tilted slightly, sensing resistance. The Force should have closed around this creature's throat like a vice. Should have lifted it effortlessly off the ground. Instead, it was like trying to grab smoke. or grip something that existed slightly out of phase with reality. Spawn's chains erupted from his body, lashing toward Vader with lethal intent. The Dark Lord's lightsaber ignited, the crimson blade humming to life and deflecting the chains in a blur of motion. Sparks flew as necroplasm-forged links struck plasma, neither yielding. Vader pushed forward, his blade carving through empty air where Spawn had been a heartbeat before. Fast, Vader acknowledged, tracking Spawn's movement with preternatural awareness. But speed alone will not save you. Spawn teleported behind Vader, materializing from shadows with both hands extended. Hellfire erupted from his gauntlets, green flames washing over the Sith Lord's armor. The temperature in the room spiked to furnace levels. Lesser beings would have been incinerated instantly. Vader stood unmoved in the inferno, his armor's environmental systems compensating, the Force itself creating a barrier that deflected the worst of the heat. When the flames cleared, he was already in motion, lightsaber sweeping in a killing arc towards Spawn's midsection. The blade connected with Letha, and for the first time, Spawn felt real pain. The symbiote shrieked in his mind as the lightsaber burned through its outer layers, cutting toward flesh beneath. Spawn twisted desperately, the blade carving a glowing line across his torso instead of bisecting him. He rolled backward, chains lashing out defensively as the suit struggled to regenerate around the cauterized wound. Your armor is formidable, Vader observed, circling like a predator. But it cannot withstand a lightsaber indefinitely. Surrender, and I will ensure your death is quick. Been dead before, Spawn rasped, pain sharpening his focus. Didn't take. He attacked with renewed ferocity, chains multiplying around him like metallic serpents. Dozens of them struck from every angle, creating a cage of necroplasmic links designed to trap and crush. Vader's lightsaber became a blur of crimson light, deflecting, cutting, parrying. But even a Sith Lord couldn't block everything at once. A chain wrapped around Vader's sword arm, another coiled around his leg. Spawn yanked hard, pulling the Dark Lord off balance, or trying to. Vader's boots remained planted as if magnetically locked to the floor, the Force anchoring him against physics itself. Impressive, Vader said, genuine interest in his mechanical voice. You possess power I have not encountered, power that does not stem from the Force. His free hand rose, and the building's support pillars began to groan. But power alone does not determine victory. The ceiling collapsed. Tons of permacrete and durasteel rained down as Vader telekinetically tore the entire structure apart. Spawn's cape expanded, forming a protective cocoon as debris hammered against him. He felt the impact of massive chunks of building material, each hit driving him deeper into the ground. Letha absorbed what it could, but the sheer mass was overwhelming. When the dust settled, Spawn lay buried under rubble, his necroplasm reserves depleted to critical levels. The teleportation during the Inquisitor fight, the hellfire against Vader, the sustained use of his chains. It had all drained him faster than he could regenerate in this Force-saturated galaxy. He was running on empty. Vader approached through the ruins, his breathing steady and unhurried. You fought well, better than most Jedi I have killed. But you are not of this galaxy, creature. You do not understand the power you face. Spawn's chains stirred weakly in the rubble. Understand this. I've fought demons. I've fought angels. I've been to actual hell and crawled back out. Your space wizard routine doesn't scare me. Then you are a fool, Vader replied. He extended his hand, and this time, rather than trying to grip Spawn directly, he seized the rubble surrounding him. The debris began to compress, tons of material closing in from all sides like a trash compactor. Spawn felt his armor straining, felt ribs beginning to creak under the pressure. Letha writhed frantically, trying to phase them out, trying to teleport. But the dimensional anchor was failing. Not enough power. Not enough time. He was going to be crushed. Then, from somewhere deep in his core where the Hellspawn essence burned eternally, Spawn found one last reserve of strength. Not necroplasm. Not borrowed power from hell. Something else. The sheer stubborn refusal to die that had sustained Al Simmons through 1,000 hells, both literal and metaphorical. His eyes blazed brilliant green. No, Spawn snarled, and necroplasmic energy exploded outward in a shockwave that shattered the compacting rubble. Chunks of debris flew in every direction. Vader raised a force barrier, the projectiles bouncing harmlessly off the invisible shield. When the dust cleared, Spawn stood in a crater, his suit smoking and damaged, but still standing. Impressive, Vader said again, this time with something that might have been respect in his synthetic voice. You refuse to yield even when defeat is certain. Such conviction is familiar. For a moment, two warriors forged in tragedy regarded each other across the ruins. Vader, who had lost everything, his wife, his children, his very identity, and emerged as a creature of pure darkness. Spawn, who had been murdered, damned, and transformed into Hell's soldier, yet still clung to fragments of the man he'd been. I will give you one chance, Vader said. His lightsaber still ignited, but lowered slightly. Serve the Empire. Your power would be valuable. The Emperor rewards those who kneel. Spawn's laugh was harsh and bitter. I don't kneel. Not to demons, not to gods, and definitely not to emperors. Been there, done that, got the scarred soul to prove it. Then you will be destroyed. Vader advanced, lightsaber raised for a killing blow. Spawn's chains rose to meet him, even as his vision began to blur from power depletion. This was it, the final exchange. One of them wasn't walking away. But before either could strike, an explosion rocked the district. Then another, and another. A pattern of coordinated detonations that drew Vader's attention. The Dark Lord paused, his helmet turning toward the sound of distant chaos. A diversion, Vader said coldly. The rebellion grows bold. In that moment of distraction, Spawn did the only thing he could. He ran. Or rather, he teleported, spending the last dregs of his necroplasm to dissolve into shadows and flee deeper into Coruscant's underworld. It wasn't honorable. It wasn't heroic. But Al Simmons had learned long ago that survival sometimes required swallowing pride. Vader watched the shadows where his quarry had vanished, his breathing the only sound in the ruined district. He could pursue, but the rebel attack required response. The Emperor would be displeased if insurgents operated freely while Vader chased a single anomaly. You cannot hide forever, Vader said to the empty air. This galaxy is mine to command, and you, creature, are now mine to hunt. The Dark Lord turned and strode toward his shuttle, leaving the ruins behind. But something in the encounter had unsettled him, though he would never admit it. The creature's defiance. Its refusal to yield even in the face of overwhelming power, it reminded Vader of someone he'd once been. Someone weak. Someone who'd lost everything because he couldn't let go. He crushed the thought beneath iron discipline and focused on the hunt. The anomaly would surface again. They always did. And when it did, Vader would be ready. In the darkness of a maintenance tunnel 3 kilometers away, Spawn collapsed against a wall, his suit barely holding together. That armored warrior had nearly killed him. Would have killed him, if not for dumb luck and a well-timed distraction. Spawn had faced powerhouses before, Omega Spawn, Violator in his true form, even angelic warriors wielding divine power. But this Vader was different. Disciplined, patient, absolutely ruthless, and seemingly immune to the fear that Spawn could usually inspire. Need help, Spawn muttered to himself, his voice weak. Need allies. Need a way out of this hell. And in the shadows of Coruscant's lowest levels, where the desperate and forgotten scraped out their existence, rumors were already spreading. Rumors of a demon that fought the Empire. A creature of chains and green fire that didn't fear stormtroopers or inquisitors or even the Dark Lord himself. The rebellion was listening to those rumors, and they had questions. The Uskru Entertainment District's lower levels were a maze of cantinas, gambling dens, and black market bazaars where Imperial credits bought anything from stolen weapons to forged identification. Here, in the perpetual twilight of artificial lighting and flickering holographic advertisements, the galaxy's unwanted came to disappear. Spawn had been hiding here for 3 days, moving between condemned buildings and forgotten maintenance shafts, rationing his necroplasm like a soldier conserving ammunition. Letha had adapted enough to accelerate healing, but the wound from Vader's lightsaber still burned whenever he moved. The symbiote had never encountered energy that could actually hurt it before, plasma, superheated to temperatures that approached stellar cores, guided by some mystical force that seemed to cut through reality itself. He needed information. He needed resources. Most of all, he needed to understand the rules of this galaxy before he made Another mistake that nearly got him killed. The cantina he'd chosen was called the Slippery Deck, an establishment that catered to smugglers, bounty hunters, and the kind of people who asked no questions as long as credits changed hands. Spawn sat in the darkest corner booth, his cape pulled tight to minimize his profile, the hood of his costume shadowing the glowing eyes that marked him as other. "You're the one they're calling the Shadow Demon," a voice said from across the table. Spawn's head snapped up. A woman had slid into the booth, opposite him with the casual confidence of someone who knew exactly how dangerous she was and didn't care. Twi'lek. Spawn had learned they were called, humanoid with tentacle-like appendages, called Leku growing from their skulls. This one had green skin and eyes that assessed him with calculating intelligence. "Didn't hear you sit down," Spawn said carefully. "Nobody does. I'm Hera Syndulla, and I represent people who are very interested in anyone capable of fighting three Inquisitors and walking away. Even more interested in someone who survived an encounter with Darth Vader himself." She leaned forward, her voice dropping. "The rebellion needs warriors like you, not a joiner," Spawn replied, though he didn't leave. He needed information more than he needed solitude. Neither are most of us, but sometimes the galaxy forces you to choose sides. Hera pulled out a small hollow projector, activating it to display a rotating image of the Empire's symbol, a gear-toothed insignia that Spawn had seen on every patrol, every building, every piece of Imperial machinery. The Empire controls everything. Freedom of speech, freedom of movement, freedom to exist, all gone. They murder dissenters, enslave entire species, and crush anyone who dares to resist. "Sounds familiar," Spawn muttered, thinking of his own Earth's endless parade of tyrants and dictators. "But I'm not from here. I don't belong in your fight." "Maybe not. But you're stuck here now, and the Empire will never stop hunting you. You embarrassed them, showed weakness in their precious Inquisitors. Vader himself failed to capture you. That makes you either a symbol of hope or a threat that must be eliminated." Hera's expression softened slightly. "We can help you. Safe house, resources, maybe even information about dimensional rifts and force anomalies. But we need something in return." Before Spawn could respond, the cantina's entrance burst open. Not stormtroopers this time, something worse. A squad of aliens in mismatched armor, their weapons drawn, scanning the crowd with predatory focus. "Bounty hunters. 500,000 credits for the Shadow Demon," the lead hunter announced, a Trandoshan whose reptilian features split in a savage grin. "Dead or alive. Empire's paying premium." The cantina's patrons scattered, chairs toppling, drinks spilling. Spawn rose smoothly, chains already forming in his hands. Hera drew a blaster pistol with practiced ease, backing toward a side exit. "This is your last chance to run," Spawn told her. "Not my style," Hera replied, and opened fire. The Trandoshan took the first shot to his shoulder armor, snarling as the energy bolt knocked him sideways. His companions returned fire, blaster bolts turning the cantina into a light show of lethal energy. Spawn's cape swept up, absorbing 3 shots meant for Hera, while his chains lashed out to disarm a Weequay bounty hunter. But these hunters were professionals, coordinated and experienced. One of them threw a thermal detonator, a small sphere that beeped ominously as it bounced toward Spawn's position. He grabbed it with a chain and hurled it back. The explosion, tearing through the bar end, sending bottles of exotic liquor cascading in a waterfall of glass and alcohol. "Move," Hera shouted, providing covering fire as Spawn advanced. He crossed the distance to the lead Trandoshan in 3 bounds, his armored fist connecting with the hunter's jaw hard enough to crack bone. The alien went down hard. Another hunter tried to shoot Spawn point blank, but Letha had extended spikes. From the armor's surface, the blaster barrel jabbed into a necroplasmic spike that pierced clean through the weapon and the hand holding it. The hunter screamed. Spawn showed no mercy, chain whipping him into unconsciousness. "There's more coming," Hera warned, her comlink crackling with updates. "Imperial reinforcements are en route. We need to leave now." Spawn hesitated. Following this woman meant committing to something, meant getting involved in a conflict that wasn't his fight. But the alternative was continuing to run alone, draining his power reserves one fight at a time until Vader or some other nightmare finally caught him. Sometimes hell gave you choices. Sometimes it just gave you different kinds of damnation. Lead the way, Spawn growled. They escaped through maintenance tunnels that Hera navigated with the confidence of someone who'd mapped every hidden route in the district. Behind them, the sound of stormtroopers flooding into the slippery deck echoed through the Durasteel corridors. Spawn's enhanced hearing picked up the mechanical voices of Imperial officers coordinating a search grid. Here, Hera said, stopping at what looked like a solid wall. She pressed a hidden control, and a section of the wall slid aside, revealing a narrow passage. Safe house. Well, safer than where we were. The room beyond was sparse but functional, sleeping mats, a portable computer terminal, crates of supplies marked with rebel insignia. 3 other people occupied the space. A human male with a scarred face who immediately drew his blaster at Spawn's entrance. A Mon Calamari whose bulbous eyes widened in alarm, and a young Rodian who looked like he'd barely seen combat. Stand down, Hera ordered. He's with us. For now. That's the thing that nearly destroyed an entire sector fighting Vader. The scarred human said, his blaster still raised. How do we know it won't turn on us? Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead, Spawn said flatly, his tone making the temperature in the room seem to drop. I don't kill people who aren't trying to kill me first. Usually, the human slowly lowered his weapon, though his hand stayed near it. Name's Saw Gerrera. I run the more aggressive operations against the Empire. If Hera vouches for you, I'll give you one chance. But cross us, and I'll find a way to put you down. Spawn recognized a fellow warrior when he saw someone who'd seen too much combat, lost too much, and kept fighting anyway because the alternative was accepting defeat. He could respect that, even if he didn't trust it. I need information, Spawn said, getting straight to business. This galaxy, how it works, how to navigate it. And most importantly, I need to know about dimensional travel, rifts between realities, anything that might get me back to where I came from. The Mon Calamari, whose name was Myram, spoke up in a gurgling voice translated by his comlink. Force rifts are theoretical. Ancient Jedi texts mention them, but no documented cases of successful dimensional travel exist in modern records. There was one, Hera interjected, about 5 years ago, during the final days of the Clone Wars. A massive disturbance in the Force that the Jedi Council investigated. They found evidence of a momentary tear in space-time, caused by the death of thousands of Force sensitives simultaneously. It healed itself almost immediately. Spawn's eyes narrowed behind his mask. Order 66. The Emperor's Purge of the Jedi. Hera looked surprised. You know about that? Heard rumors. Thousands of peacekeepers murdered in a single coordinated strike. Spawn's voice was grim. I've seen that kind of genocide before. Different universe, same evil. The Jedi Temple on Coruscant was the epicenter, Saw added. If there's any place in the galaxy where the barriers between dimensions might be thin enough to exploit, it would be there. But it's also the most heavily guarded location in the Empire. The Emperor's palace was built directly over the temple ruins. Of course it was, Spawn muttered. Nothing was ever simple. The one place he needed to investigate was literally the heart of enemy territory, guarded by the galaxy's most powerful dark side users and probably an entire army of stormtroopers. We can't help you break into the Imperial Palace, Hera said firmly. That's suicide. But we can provide intelligence, safe passage to different sectors, and allies who specialize in Force-related phenomena. There's a former Jedi in hiding on Lothal who might have knowledge we don't. And in exchange, Spawn knew there was always a price. The Empire is building something, Saw said, pulling up holographic schematics on the terminal. A weapon, a battle station capable of destroying entire planets. We have fragments of intelligence, but we need someone who can infiltrate an Imperial research facility on Scarif to steal the complete plans. Someone who can't be sensed by Force users. Someone expendable enough that if they're caught, it won't compromise our larger operations. You want me to be your ghost, Spawn translated. We want you to be our demon, Hera corrected. Strike fear into the Empire. Show them that their Dark Lord isn't invincible. Give people hope that resistance is possible. Spawn laughed, a harsh sound devoid of humor. I'm not anyone's symbol of hope. I'm a killer, a weapon. I've got innocent blood on my hands and a one-way ticket to hell. You don't want me as your inspiration. The galaxy doesn't get to choose its heroes, Saw said quietly. I was a terrorist, a revolutionary who did terrible things in the name of freedom. But people followed me anyway because I represented defiance. You don't have to be good. You just have to be willing to fight. For a long moment, Spawn was silent. He thought about his own world, about the corruption and cruelty he'd fought against, about the endless cycles of violence that had defined his existence both before and after death. He'd never wanted to be a hero. Heroes were for people who believed in redemption and happy endings, in the possibility that fighting made a difference. But he'd fought anyway, because sometimes the alternative, letting evil win unopposed, was worse than the cost of resistance. One mission, Spawn finally said. I get your plans. You give me access to that former Jedi and any information about Force rifts. After that, we're square. I don't join your rebellion. I don't become your symbol. I get home, and you never see me again. Hera extended her hand. Deal. Spawn looked at the offered hand for a moment, then clasped it with his armored gauntlet. The contact sent a slight jolt through both of them. Necroplasmic energy meeting living flesh. Two different kinds of power acknowledging each other. When do we leave? Spawn asked. 2 days, Saw answered. We're coordinating with other cells to create diversions across 3 sectors. You'll infiltrate during the chaos, access the mainframe, and extract before Imperial response arrives. Simple. Nothing's ever simple, Spawn said, but there was grim acceptance in his voice. As the rebel cell began planning the operation, Spawn moved to a corner of the safe house and settled into meditation, or what passed for it with a hell Spawn. He reached inward, assessing his necroplasm reserves, cataloging his injuries, preparing for the battle ahead. Letha whispered in his mind, the symbiote's alien consciousness merging with his own. They were healing, slowly adapting to this galaxy's unique energies. Given time, they would learn to function at full capacity here. But time was a luxury Spawn didn't have. Somewhere in the Imperial Palace, Darth Vader stood before a hologram of Emperor Palpatine, reporting his failure to capture the anomaly. Curious, the Emperor mused, his withered features contemplating the implications. A being that exists outside the Force, yet wields power comparable to a Sith. Lord, tell me, Lord Vader, did you sense fear in this creature? No, my master. It felt nothing, as if emotion itself could not touch it. Then it is either already dead, or something beyond death. Fascinating. Palpatine's yellow eyes gleamed with dark interest. Continue the hunt, but do not destroy it. I wish to study this anomaly, to understand how one might exist beyond the Force's reach. Such knowledge could prove invaluable. As you wish, my master. The hologram faded. Vader turned to gaze out over Coruscant's endless cityscape, his breathing rhythmic and patient. The creature would resurface. They always did. And when it did, he would be ready. In the safe house, Spawn opened his eyes, unaware that he'd just become a pawn in a game, played by the galaxy's most dangerous minds. The rebels wanted to use him. The Empire wanted to capture him. And somewhere in between, Hell's soldier just wanted to find a way home. But the Force had its own plans, weaving destinies with invisible threads. And sometimes, even those who existed outside its reach found themselves pulled into its grand design. The mission to Scarif was in 2 days. Whatever happened there would define Spawn's role in this galaxy's fate, willing or not. The Imperial Research Facility on Scarif rose from tropical waters like a monument to sterile efficiency. White tower structures, surrounded by defensive shield, gates and patrolled by squadrons of TIE fighters. The planet itself was a paradise world, palm trees swaying in warm breezes, crystal blue oceans stretching to the horizon. The Empire had taken something beautiful and turned it into a vault. For its darkest secrets, Spawn crouched in the cargo hold of a stolen Imperial shuttle, listening to Hera's voice crackle through the comlink embedded in his suit. The rebellion had provided him with a basic understanding of Imperial security protocols, floor plans of the data vault, and extraction coordinates. Everything else was up to him. Approaching the shield gate now, the rebel pilot whispered over the channel. Clearance codes are holding. You'll have 15 minutes once you're inside before the diversion starts. After that, Every Imperial in the sector will be looking for you. Understood, Spawn replied, his voice low. The shuttle passed through the energy shield without incident, descending toward a landing platform on the facility's eastern tower. Stormtroopers moved in formation below. Officers consulted datapads, and automated turrets tracked every vessel with mechanical precision. This was the heart of Imperial military research. One wrong move and Spawn would face not just soldiers, but the full technological might of a galaxy-spanning war machine. The shuttle touched down. The cargo ramp lowered. Spawn dissolved into shadows. He moved through the facility like a ghost, teleporting between pools of darkness, his form invisible to security cameras and undetectable to force-sensitive interrogators. The necroplasm cost was significant, but Letha had learned to draw ambient energy from the environment, supplementing Spawn's reserves with microscopic amounts of stolen life force from the facility's power grid. The data vault was 3 levels below ground, accessible only through biometric checkpoints and code cylinder locks. Spawn bypassed the first 2 by simply phasing through the walls, his body temporarily becoming intangible as the symbiote manipulated his molecular structure. The third checkpoint required an officer's authorization. A problem solved when Spawn materialized behind a passing captain, wrapped a chain around his throat just tight enough to induce unconsciousness, and borrowed his security credentials. "I'm in," Spawn reported via comlink. "Copy that. You're looking for file designation Stardust. Download everything associated with it and get out." The vault was a massive chamber lined with data towers, each containing terabytes of classified Imperial research. Spawn approached the main terminal, inserted the stolen code cylinder, and began the extraction. Holographic displays flickered to life, showing technical schematics of something enormous, a spherical space station, the size of a small moon, equipped with a weapon that could crack planets like eggs. "Death Star," Spawn muttered, reading the designation. "Subtle. The download would take 8 minutes." Spawn positioned himself near the exit, chains ready, every sense alert for approaching threats. His necroplasm reserves were at 60%, enough for a fighting retreat, but not enough for a prolonged battle. If he encountered Vader again here, in a confined facility with no civilians to create chaos, it would be a death sentence. 6 minutes remaining. Alarms began blaring throughout the facility. "They've detected the breach." Hera's voice was tense. "Multiple security teams converging on your position. The diversion is starting. Early, we're attacking the shield gate to draw forces away." "Not enough time," Spawn growled, watching the download progress bar crawl forward with agonizing slowness. The vault door exploded inward, blown apart by shaped charges. Shore troopers, elite coastal, defenders in specialized armor, poured through the opening, blaster rifles firing in coordinated bursts. Spawn's cape swept up, deflecting the first volley, while his chains lashed out to disarm and disable. 3 soldiers went down before they could adjust tactics, but more kept coming. The Empire had learned from the previous encounters. Instead of trying to capture Spawn with Force users, they were overwhelming him with conventional firepower and superior numbers. Blaster bolts filled the air like angry fireflies, each one potentially lethal if it struck flesh rather than armor. For minutes remaining, Spawn teleported to the chamber's ceiling, clinging to support beams while raining necroplasmic energy down on the soldiers below. Green hellfire splashed across shoretrooper armor, melting plastoid and causing troops to scatter. But every attack drained his reserves, and reinforcements kept arriving. A death trooper squad, black armored special forces, entered with heavy repeating blasters. Their coordinated fire was too accurate, too relentless. Spawn felt impacts against his armor, felt Letha struggling to maintain integrity as plasma burned through layer after layer of symbiotic tissue. 2 minutes remaining. Downloads taking too long. Spawn snarled into the comlink. "I'm going to have to fight my way to an alternative exit." "Negative." A new voice cut through the channel. "Saw Gerrera. Those plans are the only way we learn how to destroy that station. Millions of lives depend on you holding that position. I'm not dying for your rebellion." "Then die for yourself," Saw shot back. "Because if that weapon becomes operational, the Empire will use it to crush every world that shows even a hint of resistance, including any planet that might have dimensional rifts." They'll destroy your only way home just to make an example. Spawn wanted to tell Saw to go to hell. He'd already been there and found it lacking. But the cold logic of the statement cut through his anger. The Empire was a threat not just to this galaxy, but potentially to his own dimension. If they ever figured out how to weaponize interdimensional travel, if they could destroy planets, they could potentially seal dimensional barriers permanently. 1 minute remaining. A thermal imploder rolled into the vault, a weapon designed to create a miniature singularity that would collapse everything. Within 15 meters, Spawn grabbed it with a chain, hurled it back through the doorway, and teleported to cover as the weapon detonated. The explosion was muffled but devastating. The screams of shore troopers cut mercifully short. Download complete. Spawn yanked the data cylinder from the terminal and sprinted for the secondary exit, his armor smoking from dozens of near misses. Behind him, the vault began to collapse as emergency bulkheads slammed shut to contain the thermal imploder's damage. He was 3 corridors away when he felt it, that familiar presence, cold and patient and utterly lethal. Darth Vader stood between Spawn and the extraction point. "We meet again," the Dark Lord said, his lightsaber igniting with that distinctive snap hiss. "This time, there will be no interruptions." Spawn didn't waste breath on threats. He attacked immediately, chains erupting from his body in a coordinated assault designed to overwhelm Vader's defenses. The Sith Lord's blade became a crimson blur, deflecting each strike with mechanical precision. But Spawn had learned from their last encounter. He kept moving, teleporting between attacks, never giving Vader a stationary target to focus on. "Your tricks grow tiresome," Vader said, and gestured with his free hand. The corridor's walls began to compress, durasteel groaning as the Force manipulated matter itself. Spawn felt the space around him shrinking, felt Vader trying to trap him in a crushing vice of twisted metal. He teleported again, materializing behind the Dark Lord, chains wrapping around Vader's throat and arms. For a moment, Spawn thought he had the advantage. Then lightning erupted from Vader's gauntlets. Not force lightning. That required gestures and concentration. This was electricity channeled through damaged cybernetics, the result of a body more machine than man short-circuiting under stress. The voltage was enormous, designed to paralyze and kill. It coursed through Spawn's chains, into his armor, into his body. Lita screamed in his mind. Spawn's nervous system lit up with agony as electricity that could power a starship fried through him. His grip loosened. Vader twisted, breaking free, his lightsaber sweeping in a killing arc toward Spawn's neck. Spawn caught the blade with both hands. The necroplasm coating his gauntlets sizzled and burned, but held for the crucial second he needed to twist the lightsaber away from his throat. He kicked Vader's knee joint. The armor buckled slightly. Not enough to damage, but enough to disrupt balance. Spawn followed with a headbutt, his armored forehead crashing into Vader's mask with a resounding clang. Both warriors staggered backward, momentarily stunned. "You cannot win," Vader stated, his breathing unchanged despite the impacts. "I am the dark side incarnate. You are merely a ghost from another dimension." "Then let me teach you something about ghosts," Spawn rasped, his voice raw with pain and determination. "We don't stay dead." He unleashed everything he had left. Necroplasm reserves dropped to critical levels as Spawn channeled hellfire through both gauntlets, creating a torrent of green flame that filled the entire corridor. The temperature spiked to levels that would melt unprotected flesh, that made Durasteel glow red-hot. Vader's environmental systems screamed warnings as the heat penetrated even his armor's defenses. The Dark Lord raised both hands, creating a force barrier that deflected the worst of the inferno. But even he couldn't completely negate that much thermal energy. His breathing grew labored, his armor's cooling systems struggling to compensate. Spawn didn't wait to see the results. He teleported past Vader, through the facility's walls, emerging in an external hangar where a stolen Imperial transport waited with engines already hot. Rebel commandos provided covering fire as Spawn sprinted across the platform, blaster bolts and turbolaser fire turning the air into a lethal light show. He dove into the transport's open cargo bay. "Go, go." The ship lurched skyward, its pilot pushing the engines beyond safety limits. Behind them, the research facility erupted in secondary explosions as the rebel diversion teams detonated charges across multiple towers. TIE fighters swarmed like angry insects, their distinctive scream filling the tropical air. On the facility's observation deck, Darth Vader watched the transport escape, his armor still radiating waste heat from Spawn's attack. His breathing was slightly more labored than normal, a sign that his cybernetics had been pushed to their limits. The creature had actually hurt him, had forced him to expend significant power just to survive. Impressive, Vader murmured. Then, to his calm officer, alert the Emperor. The anomaly has stolen classified materials and is working with the rebellion. Consider it a priority 1 threat. Yes, my lord. Should we pursue? No. Let it run. The Death Star plans are now in rebel hands, precisely as the Emperor intended. Vader's mask turned toward the fleeing transport, now a distant speck against Scarif's blue sky. Sometimes, Lord Sidious, the best way to destroy your enemies is to give them hope, then crush it when they've committed everything to their futile cause. The transmission ended. Vader stood alone on the observation deck, contemplating the anomaly that had twice now evaded his grasp. It was powerful, resourceful, and utterly unpredictable. Under different circumstances, such a being could have been shaped into a formidable Sith apprentice. But the creature had no connection to the Force, no susceptibility to its corruption. It existed outside the natural order, a piece of a different reality that didn't belong. Such things were dangerous, not because they were evil, but because they represented variables the Emperor couldn't control. And Lord Sidious did not tolerate what he couldn't control. In the transport's cargo hold, Spawn collapsed against a bulkhead, his suit smoking and damaged. Necroplasm levels at 15%. Letha was working overtime to keep him alive, drawing power from Spawn's own life force to sustain critical functions. Every breath hurt. Every movement sent spikes of pain through his nervous system. But clutched in his armored hand was a data cylinder containing the Death Star plans. The Rebellion's hope. Maybe the galaxy's only chance to strike back against the Empire's ultimate weapon. Did you get them? Hera's voice crackled through the comm link, tense with desperate hope. Yeah, Spawn managed. I got them. The cargo hold erupted in cheers from the rebel commandos, their jubilation washing over Spawn like a foreign language. They were celebrating a victory, believing they'd struck a meaningful blow against tyranny. They didn't understand that in his experience, every victory just led to harder battles, greater costs, and more innocent blood spilled in the name of righteousness. But looking at their faces, human, alien, all united in desperate defiance, Spawn felt something he hadn't experienced in centuries. Not hope exactly. Hope was for people who believed in happy endings. This was something else. Recognition, maybe. The acknowledgement that these people were fighting the same fight he'd waged his entire life, against the same kinds of monsters that wore different faces but spoke the same language of oppression. So what now? Saw asked, appearing on a holoscreen from another ship in the small fleet. You got what you came for. The Jedi contact on Lothal is expecting you. Are you really going to walk away? Spawn looked at the data cylinder, then at the faces of the rebels who'd risked everything to give him a chance at escape. He thought about Vader, about the Emperor, about a weapon capable of destroying entire planets. He thought about his own Earth, his own battles against corruption and cruelty. The Jedi, Spawn said finally. Give me what I need to find my way home. After that, he paused, something dark and determined settling in his voice. After that, we'll see. Maybe hell's got one more fight left in it. The transport jumped to hyperspace, streaks of starlight replacing Scarif's tropical skies. Behind them, the Empire mobilized, hunting the anomaly that had embarrassed their greatest warrior and stolen their most classified secrets. Ahead, on a backwater world called Lothal, a former Jedi named Kanan Jarrus felt a disturbance in the Force. Not evil, not good, but something else entirely. Something from beyond the stars, carrying power that made the Force itself recoil. Master, his Padawan Ezra asked, sensing his teacher's sudden tension. What is it? Something's coming, Kanan said quietly, his blind eyes somehow seeing further than sight could reach. Something that doesn't belong in our galaxy. Something that's going to change everything. And in the depths of space, Spawn meditated in the cargo hold's darkness, feeling Letha slowly regenerating, feeling his necroplasm reserves building back toward fighting capacity. He'd survived another encounter with Vader. He'd completed an impossible mission. He'd bought himself access to knowledge that might, just might, show him the way home. But even as he planned his next move, some part of him, the part that was still Al Simmons, still human beneath the hellspawn transformation, wondered if he even wanted to go home. His Earth had nothing left for him but memories of failure and damnation. This galaxy, for all its dangers, represented something different. A chance to fight for something that mattered, against enemies who deserved what he could unleash. Maybe hell had sent him here for a reason. Maybe the dimensional rift wasn't an accident, but destiny in disguise. Or maybe he was just another damned soul, doomed to wander between worlds, fighting battles that could never truly be won. Only time would tell. And in a galaxy where the Force wove the fates of trillions, even those who existed outside its reach sometimes found themselves part of its grand design. The hunt continued. The war raged on. And somewhere between light and darkness, Hell's soldier carved his own path, one blood-soaked step at a time. The data cylinder containing the Death Star plans would eventually reach the Rebel Alliance's leadership on Yavin 4, setting in motion events that would shake the galaxy to its foundations. But Spawn's role in that story was just beginning, not ending. On Lothal, he would meet Canon Jarrus and learn fragments of truth about the Force, about the dimensional barriers that separated realities, and about the ancient Sith rituals that could tear holes between worlds. He would discover that the same dark side energy that powered the Empire might also provide the key to opening a rift home, if he was willing to pay the price. But prices were something else Simmons understood intimately. He'd paid with his life, his soul, his humanity. What was one more bargain with darkness if it meant escape? Except the galaxy had other plans. Darth Vader's hunt would intensify, pushing Spawn into increasingly desperate situations. The Emperor's interest would grow, his ancient eyes seeing potential in a being that existed outside the Force's influence. And the rebellion, desperate for any advantage, would continue pulling Spawn deeper into their cause. Hell's soldier had come to the Star Wars galaxy seeking only a way home. Instead, he found himself trapped in a war that spanned star systems, facing enemies that wielded powers he barely understood, fighting alongside allies who believed in hope even when darkness seemed absolute. Some would call him a demon. Others would whisper of the Shadow Warrior who fought the Empire without fear. A few would recognize the truth, that he was simply a man who'd been given too much power, suffered too much loss, and refused to stop fighting even when the battle seemed hopeless. In the end, whether Spawn found his way home or remained trapped in this galaxy far away mattered less than what he chose to do with the time he had. Every chain he threw, every burst of hellfire he unleashed, every stand he made against tyranny became part of the galaxy's tapestry, a dark thread woven through the Force's design. And perhaps that was Hell's greatest joke, sending a damned soul to a galaxy where redemption still seemed possible, where even the darkest warrior could find purpose in the fight against evil. The Force would remember Spawn's presence, even if it couldn't touch him. The Empire would hunt him until either he fell or they did. And somewhere in the cosmic balance between light and dark, Hell's soldier would continue walking the line that only he could navigate, neither Jedi nor Sith, neither hero nor villain, but something uniquely his own. A warrior born in one hell, fighting to escape another, who discovered that sometimes damnation wasn't a place, but a choice. And the only way to be free was to stop running and start fighting back.